I'm honored to be able to pay tribute to Major Linda Ibbs. I've got to know her a lot better since she moved back to this community after serving as an officer in the Salvation Army Central Territory for over 40 years. But prior to her retirement, whenever she would visit Royal Oak, she would participate with us in our Sunday school class, the Bereans Sunday school class, and that's the best context within which I got to know her. I would always be in awe of her. She was one of the few persons I knew personally with a vast knowledge of biblical archaeology. When she moved back to the area about 9 or so years ago, we were thrilled to have her join our Bereans family. I quickly learned a few things about her. Let me state that I cannot vouch for anyone else's understanding of who she is. I can only speak personally of my observations, mainly on a Sunday morning. A preacher I know once said, "Many things get said at funerals that are not true." I don't want to make him right today. So what I say is my personal perspective. Forgive me if I misspeak. Cliff will help me out afterwards. From my personal perspective, she was picky. She loathed that the scripture passage that we would use would sometimes not capitalize the personal pronouns referring to the triune God. She wanted the he and the him and the his to be uppercase whenever it referred to God. Since our Sunday school curriculum uses the new NIV, whenever it was my turn to teach, I would do a word search, Control F, search for the words he, him, and his, and make sure I uppercase the H. Sometimes I would miss one. She would let me know I didn't do it right. She would not be pleased about that. Secondly, from my perspective, she was spunky. I recall the first time I sent her an email. On the reply email, I saw her name along with the email address. I still smile when I see her name. It said, first name, I prefer not, last name, to give my name. Huh, what spunk? Under that it said, Linda Ibbs at usc.salvationarmy.org, so I'm not sure what she was doing there, but I thought, you're a spunky lady. I prefer not to give my name. Thirdly, from my perspective, she was chatty. I love that she always brought new information to our group. Sometimes that information would be something that she gleaned just prior to coming to church. I learned that we had some things in common. We both liked to watch CBS Sunday Morning, which started at 9 o'clock. In those days, Sunday school started at 9:45. I would record it. She would watch a few minutes of it and then come to church. I'm not sure if she had a VCR or DVD recorder, but she would come and she would talk about what just was shown on the Sunday morning, if it happened to tie into what we were talking about. Fourthly, from my perspective, Linda was passionate. I was going to read the obituary, but I think that hopefully everyone has their glasses and can read it on their own, so I will skip that in the interest of time. But as you look at the obituary, you'll see that she had many passions. But one of her passions is not included on that list, at least one: archiving prior editions of the Salvation Army Songbook. When she came back to Royal Oak, she gave me a copy of an impressive project she was working on, a spreadsheet containing information on every song in every edition of the Salvation Army Songbook and other publications. The only one that was not archived in that file was the 2015 edition, which she was yet to add. I think she handed me the project hoping that I would take the mantle and update the project. Alas, I have failed her in that regard. Even so, I could fall in love with anyone who had the patience to compile such a masterpiece. Let me rephrase that. I'd fall in love with anyone who loved the Salvation Army Songbook as much as I do. Fifthly, she loved learning. I've already mentioned her love for biblical archaeology. Last week in the parking lot, Cliff offered me her collection of archaeology books and magazines, and I told him I would like them, but I prefer that they be stored here at the Corps so that others would be able to benefit from them. And finally, she loved the Royal Oak Salvation Army Citadel Band. She would tell everyone we had the best band in Michigan, and I wish I could say more about this. She probably boasted beyond Michigan to say what a great band we have here. Prior to her retirement, she had an unfortunate accident. And I recall the email that came from territorial headquarters. It said, "Please pause for a moment and lift our sister to the throne of grace, asking God to give her supernatural peace in her heart and mind." I quickly thought of Psalm 73. The psalmist Asaph said in verse 26, "Maybe my mind and body will become weak, but God is the source of my strength. He is mine forever." That was my prayer for her. Many years later, I now smile as I envision Linda at the throne of grace, where out of his infinite riches, God is giving her an abundance of supernatural peace. Peace that you too will experience when it's your turn. And the Lord will say to you those words found in Matthew chapter 25, verses 21 and 23. "Enter into the joy of the Lord." At such a time, you too will be able to sing these words so beautifully expressed by Richard Slater, affectionately known as the father of Salvation Army music, in song number 536 in the 1987 edition, because the 2015 edition chose to leave that song out. Maybe that's why Linda didn't want to update the project any further. There are some of us who love the older editions and the older versions of NIV and the older translations. Yes. Here's what Richard Slater wrote in that song. I'll give you the chorus. "My soul has found a resting place, and I am now, through heavenly grace, at peace with God, at peace with God." So, in conclusion, to this good and faithful servant of God, Major Linda Karen Ibbs, I conclude with these words. Thank you. Thank you for your service, not only to us here in the Royal Oak community, but wherever your service in the Salvation Army took you. Well done, good and faithful servant.